Barney Blackburn. I know I've interacted with a lot of you through email or phone call. I haven't met you in person yet. And so we got a lot of good information to share with you all. So I'll go ahead and get started. Make sure there we go. So want to introduce our plan review service areas to everybody. For Wake County, unincorporated jurisdiction, we have erosion control, stormwater, and floodplain regulations that are out of our Unified Development Ordinance. Our municipal jurisdiction partners are town of Garner and town of Morrisville for erosion control only. They have their own stormwater and floodplain regulations. And then for erosion control and stormwater, we have an interlocal agreement with the towns of Rolesville, Wendell, and Zebulon. And so, again, I'm Barney Blackburn. I've been with the county a little over 6 years now. I've taken a couple of breaks from the county over those 6 years, but I'm the plan review team lead for 4 plan reviewers now, and we'll introduce those folks here shortly. I'm responsible for Wake County construction plan reviews for subdivisions and non-residential sites. I'm the town of Wendell contact, and typically I'm the primary reviewer for town of Wendell development plans. And then also I've been the Swift Creek contact for many years. And so just a little bit of background on me. I spent 16 years with DOT, about 18 months with AECOM consulting firm, and then with another firm. And then I also worked with the town of Fuquay-Varina. So next we have Shawn Springer. He's been with the county several years. And so Shawn, if you want to wave hi to everyone. Thank you, Shawn. And so Shawn's been with the county several years, and so he's done a lot of plan review, more than I have with the county. And so he's the Falls Lake contact and typically the primary reviewer up that way. Also, he has experience with Jordan Lake and RTP sites in the western part of the county. But he also is available to review construction plans for any of the Wake County jurisdictional areas for subdivisions and commercial sites. And he also has reviewed a lot of construction plans in Morrisville area. And he and Javon DePani, they're splitting duties in Morrisville. So you may see Shawn or Javon's name on review checklist. Okay, so next we have Janet Boyer that works with our group. Janet, she'll say hi to everyone. And Janet worked with NCDEQ out of the Asheville Regional Office and then the Central Office in Raleigh here in downtown. And then most recently, she worked with the city of Raleigh. So we're glad to have Janet and her experience. She's responsible for the Little River rules as a primary contact there. She's also involved with Wake County subdivision commercial site reviews. And then she's the primary contact now for the town of Rolesville. So most Rolesville submittals, you'll see Janet's signature on those review checklists. And then next we have Carrie Mitchell that joined us back in August. And I put Carrie as the, she worked for the city of Raleigh, and then most recently the town of Wake Forest is where we stole her from. So, and I put her as the floodplain manager in training. And so she's in the process of taking over those duties from Betsy Pierce. And so she will be our floodplain expert here shortly. And then she's also tasked with reviewing Wake County construction plan reviews for subdivisions and commercial sites. And then Carrie is going to be our town of Zebulon contact. So she'll be the primary reviewer for town of Zebulon development plans. And then last but not least, we have Kevin Zelaya. Kevin, if you'll say hi to everyone. And Kevin worked with City of Durham, and so that's where he came from. And Kevin's going to be more or less the primary Swift Creek contact along with myself. So if you have any Swift Creek questions, reach out to Kevin. And just like the rest of us, he's involved with Wake County construction plan reviews for subdivisions and non-residential sites. And then Kevin's going to be our primary contact for Town of Garner developments and erosion control plans. Okay, so we're going to dive right in here to Wake County submittals. So we are in the InterGov system, all electronic submittals. So no need to send us any hard copies of any documents. If you send them to us, we may keep them for a short time frame, but most likely we're going to recycle them or ask you to upload electronic documents to the portal. The plan review and the permit fees are invoiced through InterGov, and so those fees typically can't be paid until they're invoiced. So just hold tight after you've made a submittal until those fees are invoiced. And then the fees can be paid electronically through the system by credit card or a check. If you write a check, make it payable to Wake County. I try to tell folks hand delivering the check is the best way to get it to us on the 6th floor of our building. But if you have to mail it, please check with us to verify the mailing address, because those checks get lost in the mail all the time. So, and then once the plan review fees are paid for either erosion or stormwater or flood study, then that starts our review cycle. So just keep that in mind. Even though you may have submitted all your documents, it has to go through our front office application completeness check, and then they'll invoice the fee. And as quickly as you can pay that plan review fee, the quicker it's in our review queue cycle. Okay, so for Wake County and municipal submittals, for erosion control, stormwater, and flood studies, Wake County has jurisdiction over those. Also, Research Triangle Park, erosion, stormwater, and flood studies are applicable. For erosion control only, as I mentioned, Town of Garner and Town of Morrisville is erosion control only. They have their own stormwater and floodplain regulations. And then residential single lot and lot by lot in Wake County or the municipal areas would be erosion control only. If you're submitting subdivisions or commercial sites in the towns of Rolesville, Wendell, or Zebulon, just remember you have to submit erosion control and stormwater management, either residential or non-residential, for sites in these 3 municipal areas. A lot of folks think they only need to submit erosion control to us, but that's not true unless it's a lot by lot or a single lot. We need that stormwater submittal too. Floodplain and flood regulations in these municipalities are left with the municipalities. They have jurisdiction over those. So just keep that in mind. We do not have flood jurisdiction in the municipalities. Okay, so required forms for the submittals. You either want to submit the joint construction application, which I have a link to that in the presentation, or an individual lot application if it's a single lot. And so both of those links are there at the top. For erosion control submittals, we do require financial responsibility ownership form to be completed, signed, and notarized. That's just for erosion control submittals. And then we have just added a signature authority form. If you need a signature authority, we have a template on our website now, and it's available in the link here under the FRO. Notarized consent letters, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. The notarized consent letter, we have a template for that now on our website, and those are going to be for properties that the developer does not own. We need a consent letter from that landowner to give that developer permission to permit and to submit a erosion control plan to the county. Applicable submittal checklist. Typically, we like to see those. Those are to help you all more or less than to help us. And so those are available on our website, and we're in the process of updating those checklists. So you should have the latest and greatest of those available soon. And then something new that the state has pushed local programs on recently is the property deed. And so we may not have requested that in the past, but we're going to start requesting those in the future. So just keep that in mind. We'll need those property deeds for y'all. So for landowner notarized consent letter, we get a lot of questions on this. And so you may see this note on our review checklist of, developer, if they don't own the property, they'll need to submit this consent letter from the landowner granting them permission to permit and construct on their land. And there's two areas where this shows up, and it's one is in the Sediment Law, SPCA, and in our Wake County Unified Development Ordinance. And so I've got excerpts of those in the next couple of slides here. It's highlighted in SPCA here. And then in our Wake County UDO, Article 10-30-2, here in item C, it talks about that notarized consent letter. So these are items that have always been in the law and our ordinance. And so we're going to be, continue to look for these on the submittals. Okay, so required maps. We do want to have the USGS topographical map with the project limits delineated in color. And so just keep that in mind. Black and white copies, they just don't show enough clarity. And then the Wake County Soil Survey map from the 1970 manuscript, we'd like to have that in color too, with the project limits delineated. And so a lot of folks have difficulty finding the soil survey map. And so recently NCDEQ has offered the following website for the USGS and the soil survey map layers. And so provided a link here that you all can use in the future if you want to, it's a one-stop shop for both maps. And so I think you can just toggle the layers on and off and enter in your address for the site. It drops a marker on the website, and then you can print out that area to submit. So for the web soil survey, a lot of folks submit the NRCS web soil survey map to us as their soil survey map. And just remember, the web soil survey is mostly for the hydric soil delineations only. It's not what we're looking for. The soil survey map from the county's 1970 manuscript, the reason we want that one is drainage features will show up on it that are not present on the web soil survey. So that's what we're looking for on that 1970 manuscript map. Okay, so we're going to dive into erosion sediment control plans here. We get a lot of plans that have preliminary seal on them, and so our checklist does require seal and sign and date of all the plan sheets. And so we are going to start requesting, even though the initial submittal to us, we're going to require they be sealed, signed, and dated. And so just keep that in mind. We want it to be, an official submittal to us is one reason why we're requiring this for our review. Also, we want to make sure you all include a existing condition plan sheet too, just so we can see the environmental features and existing contours without build out conditions or without erosion sediment control measures on it. Kind of helps us get a general view of the site before we start diving into the specific plan sheets. And then a new requirement, this is also going to be in our new stormwater manual. We're going to start asking for a minimum of 3 phases for erosion sediment control. And so phase 1 is going to be limits of disturbance only, just shown just to install those perimeter erosion sediment control measures. And then for phase 2 plan, you will expand the LOD for grading the remainder of the site. And so that's a little bit different than what maybe you all submitted in the past. And then phase 3 will be the final grade build out conditions. And so we're going to start looking for these 3 phases minimum for your erosion sediment control design. Next, just make sure some of y'all like to, put 20 construction details on one plan sheet, and the print just gets really small. And so think about it as the developer, our field consultants, trying to read those plan sheets. And so make sure you scale those details to be legible to think about anybody that walks up on the site, give them a construction plan set so they can read the notes on those details. And then lastly, just a reminder to include the most current NCGO1 details from the NCDEQ website in your construction drawings. That's where they maintain those, and I've got a link to those here at the bottom. So don't just copy the detail from the last plan you submitted to us. Make sure you go to their website to download the most recent version of that. It may have changed since the last submittal to us. Okay, just a summary of the DEQ sediment basin requirements versus our Wake County requirements. And so we do have different requirements in the state. Our requirements are more stringent, as you can see. Surface area, we're at 435 square feet per CFS. Basin volume and skimmer orifice sizing is based off drainage area, not disturbed area. So it's 1,800 cubic feet per drainage area for the volume and skimmer. Dewatering time is 3 to 5 days, not 2 to 5 days for our sediment basins. And then we're linked. And so the 4 feet the state requires, our minimum is 10 feet. And so the drainage area limits, we see this a lot. If you're using a Wake County custom basin or an excavated sediment storage or a sediment trap, your drainage area to those devices should be 1 acre or less. And then for the skimmer basin designs, your drainage area should be 10 acres. And that's just with the skimmer outlet. And then once you have that riser with the skimmer, your permanent stormwater devices, the drainage area limit is up to 100 acres. And so we'll be checking for that. If you all can check for that, just make sure you're not sending more than 10 acres to just a temporary skimmer basin. And so here's some basin criteria from our website. I will note this third item from the top here. We have use minimum C factor of 0.5 for areas drained into the basin. That's for disturbed areas only. If you have offsite that's wooded or pasture or residential, you can use the C factors of less than 0.5, but it needs to be a weighted number still with your disturbed area or any impervious areas that's drained into your sediment basin. And then one main thing in the middle of this slide is our Wake County hybrid sediment basin design spreadsheet. It's basically a model of the state's sediment basin design spreadsheet, except we modified it to our design criteria. And so this is one location where you can download that. I know a lot of you all use the hybrid basin spreadsheet, which is great. That's what it's there for. But some of you have your own nice spreadsheets too. So just make sure you revise your own spreadsheets to include our design data. And then we have sizing the weir information here at the bottom on that web page. Okay, just some sediment basin guidance that we've seen. Here's a link to our hybrid sediment basin design spreadsheet again. We would like for you all to show the skimmer attached to permanent riser for all phases of your erosion control plan sheets. We as designers, we have a lot of power with the erosion control design. Unfortunately, we don't have the authority to tell the contractor when to remove the riser and the baffles from those stormwater ponds. And so that's up to our developer and our field staff to coordinate that. And so just keep showing those through all the phases on your basins. Another thing, a reminder, is to include a pad and a label for the filter bag for maintenance and closeout. And that's a requirement of the NCGO1 general construction permit from the state. And so that's a common comment I make on my reviews. And then lastly, just like the skimmer, we want you all to conclude the porous baffles in all phases on those sediment basins. So here's an example. A good example of a final grade sediment basin where you've got the forebay shown, the permanent pipe coming in from the inlet at the bottom. You've got 3 baffles shown there across the main cell of this basin. You've got the skimmer shown attached to the riser still. You've got proposed contours with contour labels on those. You've got perimeter silt fence. One note I'd like to make is you want to make sure your baffle line style is different from your silt fence line style, as in this case. And so you don't want to use the same line style for your baffles and your silt fence, because otherwise contractors going to, install silt fence for baffles or vice versa. So you want to make sure it's a distinguished line style. And then there's silt fence outlets at the outlet of the riser barrel and the emergency spillway there, as you can see on the upper left. I did add, this was an older plan, so I did add the filter bag for maintenance and closeout. Just a example location of where that might be on your plan and how to label that. So you see a little blue square at the top of the sheet on the perimeter of that sediment basin. We want those shown on all phases of your erosion control design as well. Okay, next, stream crossings. We're going to cover a couple of items here. So if you would, remember to design the 4-corner sediment storage approach, and I have a slide for that next. You'll also want to include a detailed construction sequence to manage the stream flow during the installation of a culvert or culverts for your site. We want to keep that stream flowing and clean throughout the construction process. And then one comment I often make is to provide those applicable stream management details: impervious dikes, your filter bag, pump around. We are beginning to request that you all size the pump for a pump around operation, and you can size it to convey the 2-year peak flow, 2-year storm peak flow. And the 2-year storm is typically the standard for temporary stream crossings, pump arounds. If you have a temporary diversion equipment crossing, you need to design it for the 2-year storm is sufficient. And then we will ask for, if there's a need to cross the stream with equipment, we want you all to show that stream crossing location on your plan sheets. And that can either be our standard stone with culverts detail we have on our website. There's also a single span, I call it a mat, but it should be timber mat crossing detail. We don't have it on our website just yet, but we're looking to add that in the future. And so here's the 4 corners stream protection, a diagram of what that looks like. So you've got just examples here of what you want to protect the stream with silt fencing or diversion channel or an earthen berm, and you use those measures to divert the runoff to these storage devices. So it can be either a rock dam, a sediment trap with rock dam, skimmer basin, or your permanent pond with the skimmer there to help protect the stream and provide that sediment storage for keeping sediment out of the stream. And then here's the single span crossing detail I mentioned. That's on our website, but sometimes we'll provide these to you all directly in our email or on our review checklist. And so if the stream channel is small enough to span it with these timber mats, that's our preference, just because it's less impact to the stream itself. When you're placing stone in a temporary culvert in a stream channel, you've got to recover that stone out of the channel, and that can disturb the stream banks unnecessarily. And so if you think you can span the stream with just a single span crossing, this is the detail we'd like for you all to use. Okay, we're jumping right ahead to stormwater. So for stormwater management submittal to us for Wake County jurisdiction, you will have to complete and submit the Wake County Hybrid Stormwater Tool. Municipal stormwater tool is for municipalities of Rolesville, Wendell, and Zebulon. So just make sure you distinguish the tool from each, for the municipalities to Wake County. Provided, tool is going to help you provide the target curve number volume. It applies to subdivisions only for Wake County jurisdictions. And then we want you to treat the impervious surfaces with the SCMs to the maximum extent practical. And you can utilize disconnected impervious credit that's provided within the Wake County Stormwater Hybrid tool. And this is for drainage areas with less than 30% impervious. And you'll see that note on the DA worksheets. Downstream impact analysis, something new we added to Article 9-22 several years ago. And so it does apply to subdivisions, commercial sites, and it's also in the towns of Rolesville, Wendell, and Zebulon stormwater ordinance. It's analysis of 10-year, 24-hour design storm for pre and post conditions. And then it's a 10% rule drainage area evaluation that you all need to provide with that submittal. And then we do want you all provide drainage area maps and a pre-post Q flow summary table, or some of the items that we would require for this DIA submittal to the county. And here's an example. It's going to be in our stormwater manual. And so, if you'll pardon me, I'm going to read straight from this example to you all, so I don't get this messed up. But Site A is at the northeastern part of the slide. Site A is a 10-acre development which discharges to a tributary. The 10% point would be the point at which the total drainage area, which includes the project, is 100 acres. This will be located somewhere between the 80 and the 120-acre junction points of the tributary. And so in this case, the downstream analysis would need to end at the junction labeled 120 acres and is the closest junction past the 10% point. The 10% rule comparison points would include the site outlet, the 40-acre junction, 80-acre junction, and a 120-acre junction. And so that's sort of an example of Site A. Site B is also another example that will be provided in our stormwater manual, and we can provide this example to you all if you need that after we've done our initial review. So SCM placement and easements, some information here. SCMs are required to be placed in open space now in accordance with our ordinance. They're no longer allowed to be placed on individual lots for regular subdivisions. Now single lot permitting is a different story. We do want 20 foot of access easement to those SCMs, and those can be split on property lines, 10 feet on each side of that residential property line. And then we want 10 feet of maintenance access from the toe of the embankment of the pond for future maintenance that the HOA and HOA's contractor may have to do to the embankment. And then lastly, avoid placement of hydric soils. If feasible, if you have to place embankment hydric soils, we typically will ask for armoring the toe of the embankment with riprap. So just some design reminders for SCMs. We do follow the MDC guidelines from the NCDEQ website. Remember to model and show your 1 year, 10 year, and 100-year storms in the profile section of your SCMs. If vegetated shelf is applicable, want you to show that width on your plan view and profile sections, and then provide appropriate plants or provide a plant list for the contractor to choose from. Also include anti-buoyancy calculations for the riser pipe footer slab that often get forgotten with submittals. And then with that barrel pipe, we want you all to design an anti-seep collar or collars, or some of you all have designed the filter cradle, sand filter cradles around the barrel pipe, and that's acceptable too. But if you design the anti-seep collars, we want you to provide the location, dimensions, the width, material type, thickness, things like that for those anti-seep collars, so that developers will know where and what to install. And so here's just an example from the MDC stormwater manual. Added a note here, don't forget the forebay. Wake County's preference is to have a forebay in dry and wet ponds, and so make sure you design a forebay for these structures. And then here's another, the outlet structure snapshot. the filter cradle alternative would just kind of go around the outlet pipe. And then, as I mentioned before, make sure you specify anti-seep collar dimensions and location along the barrel pipe. So I did mention we're going through a county stormwater manual update. And so with the update, we're going to update information for subdivisions and single lot stormwater deviations, along with the non-residential sites. As I mentioned, the downstream impact analysis, because it's new, a lot of folks have questions on it. We're going to provide a step-by-step procedure and example in the manual. The manual should be available, hopefully, a little later this year. I can't specify a specific date, but that will be available once it goes through. There will be a public review cycle on it. We're wrapping up the draft sections this week, as a matter of fact, and so it'll go out for public review and comment shortly. So we are adding an erosion sediment control section to the manual, which is not in the current manual, and a floodplain management section, which will also be a new section. Okay, so the Neuse River stormwater rules updates. A lot of you all have heard about these, and so one of the major things, requirements for the rules will be the snap tool will be required for your nutrient loading of nitrogen and phosphorus, and so we'll transition to the snap tool requirement as we adopt the rules in our ordinance. One thing that is being removed from the Neuse River rules is the requirement for pre-post peak flow for the 1-year storm. And Wake County is also going to remove that requirement from our stormwater manual and requirements, except for Falls Lake. They have their own Falls Lake rules that include the pre-post peak flow. So we'll have to keep it there until those rules are amended and adopted sometime in the future. And then we will keep our Wake County target curve number volume requirement for subdivisions only. And that'll be a separate spreadsheet, a smaller scale spreadsheet than the hybrid tool or the snap tool. And so you will have to, run 2 spreadsheets, the snap tool for nutrients, and then the target curve number spreadsheet for the target curve number volume. Okay, so the implementation schedule, the MC is going to approve our, hopefully approve our, we expect them to approve our draft stormwater program in May of this year. And then after they approve it, NCDEQ will notify us that they've approved it. And so once we get that notification from NCDEQ, we'll have 6 months to adopt and implement the new program. And so we'll be in a heavy or a tight schedule to get that adopted. And so basically it'll be updating Article 9 of the Unified Development Ordinance is what we'll revise. And then at some point, the municipalities of Rolesville and Wendell will have to follow a similar process that Wake County will follow with the EMC. I didn't mention Zebulon. Zebulon is not a Neuse River community, so they're exempt from the rules. Okay, so our last topic here will be for flood studies. And so the flood studies are applicable to structural fill and culverts and FEMA stream channels for the FEMA floodplain. Also in hydric soils for drainage areas of 5 acres or more. And so flood studies typically apply to roads and residential driveways is where you'll see that request come from us for a flood study, either minor or major. And then currently, the way the ordinance is written, that any dam in hydric soils with the drainage area of 5 acres or more also will need a flood study. And so we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides, but this is something we're enforcing now. So you may receive this comment on our plan reviews you didn't receive before. And so we are enforcing this now. So for flood study submittal requirements, we do have a checklist. We highly recommend you all use from our website. We do want a narrative kind of describing, what you're doing, drainage areas and things like that, summary tables. And then obviously we want the drainage area maps, and then the hydrologic model comp sheets. We'd like to see your hydrographs and all of that data. We'd like for you all to submit with these flood study submittals. So the calculations for flood study, standard for the county, it's a 10-year storm design, a 25-year design storm for high quality waters, and when there's Wake County water supply watersheds in place. Another calculation you'll have to run, we'll be interested in, is the 100-year storm backwater and the easement. And so the easement requirement is the base flood elevation, which is the 100-year backwater elevation plus one foot according to our ordinance. And then there is a balance of cut and fill requirement for the stormwater control measure, dams and embankments. And so here's where the requirements we're enforcing now for the SCM embankments come from. If you look in Wake County in subarticle 14-21-1, it does reference subarticles 14-19 and 14-20, which do require balance of cut and fill and it's for drainage areas that are 5 acres or greater is the trigger for this requirement. And so if you can keep your stormwater control measure embankment outside the hydric soils, you're exempt. But if they're in the hydric soils and you've got more than 5 acres draining to this point, we will be adding a comment on our review checklist to submit a flood study. And so for a minor flood study, these are for drainage areas less than 100 acres. It's a $500 review fee. It's a 30 calendar day review for us, and then 15 calendar days for each resubmittal. Most hydrologic models are accepted for the minor flood study, and then HECRAS analysis is not required. And then major flood studies, it's a $1,000 review fee, same review timeframes as the minor. It's for drainage areas greater than 100 acres. And a HECRAS analysis is required for the major flood study. And we've just added HECRAS submittal checklist and a format guide to our website, and the links are shared here at this bottom bullet point. And so I should have marked these as new too. It's something we just got uploaded to our website this month. And with that, that's our information we wanted to share with you all. I did want to note our email address extensions have changed. We are now at wake.gov. And so our old email addresses should be available for maybe another 6 months or so, but you want to get those changed to the @wake.gov in your contacts list. And so with that, if there
Thanks, Barney, for that plug for the website address. I'm proud of you for getting that in there.
Right, yeah.
We did get a couple questions. So since we do have some time, why don't we try to get to those? We had a question from Scott who asked, what are some of the proposed changes to single family stormwater deviations for the impervious area coverages that are in this new stormwater manual? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, hey Scott. So it's basically just updating the forms and information, Scott. I don't think a lot of changes are going to occur with the actual numbers as far as impervious area limits and things like that. I think we're going to be just the same. We're just going to update any information that needs to be updated, diagrams, illustrations, things like that. But just want to let you all know that currently in our current stormwater manual, there is information on single lot deviations in the manual. I don't know if you all knew that, but yeah, we're just going to update that information just to be more current. Our current manual was updated in 2013, and so it was really time to update it, 10 years later anyway. And then, the stormwater manual updates will coincide with the new Neuse River stormwater rules. So good question.
Another question, Barney, is from Landon. He says, can you explain or clarify that 10% rule for the DIA further? Are they to study downstream to a point where their drainage area is 10% of the study drainage area? And also, when that happens to projects that are submitted now prior to the new stormwater manual updates, so they're sort of asking which rules need to be followed.
Okay, yeah, and I was kind of expecting that question because, I'll be honest with you, downstream impact analysis is new to me as well. It's been in other municipal ordinances for years. And so just from this example that I provided, if just for make it easy, so your 10% area, is going to be 10. If it's a total drainage area of 100 acres to your point of interest, to your point of discharge. If it's 100 acres of total drainage area, your 10% point is going to be 10 acres to that point. And so that's where the 10% applies. And so that's the easiest way I know to explain it. Like I say, we can provide you all with examples, detailed examples, and a step-by-step procedure. We've been providing that to some folks. So that's what that means. Is you need to find your 10% point of the total drainage area is what you would analyze, if that makes sense.
And I was going to say too, Barney, if anyone in the meeting would like to unmute themselves and ask so that they can ask better than I do, please, and have a conversation, you're welcome to. So if that didn't answer your question, Landon, please feel free to just, unmute and or raise your hand. Another question, Barney, was from David. For that 10% rule, which again, you anticipated getting questions about, is detaining the 10-year pre-post on-site still acceptable for meeting this requirement?
Right, yeah, David, I expected that question too. And so it is acceptable. However, we still require the calculations, a summary table, of the pre-post 10-year storm events, and the mapping. And so just because you're going to detain the 10-year under, below the invert of the riser, we still want the supporting data. And so just keep that in mind that you can do that. But, the downstream impact analysis for that 10-year storm is protect downstream properties. One of the options in the ordinance is to obtain an easement, off-site of your, if your subdivision, you don't want to detain, or you don't want to, attenuate the 10-year pre-post on site, you'll have to go off-site to do that. Well, you've got to have a really nice neighbor to agree to have a device on their property, and to, the HOA would have to maintain that and inspect it and go off-site. And it's really a complex situation that we've never seen, and preferably would rather not have that situation. And so that's the purpose of the DIA, is to try to provide that treatment on site if you can. And so, but the supporting, maps and calculations are still required even with the 10-year attenuation in the stormwater pond.
Another question from Vern. Will DIA and flood study be required for preliminary subdivision review, or just with the construction plan submittal?
Okay, yep, great question. The DIA is on our preliminary subdivision checklist. However, we do understand impervious areas may not be locked in just yet. And so we can work with you to forego the preliminary submittal to submit the DIA for construction drawing submittal. But at that point, the DIA would be required. We would not provide you with an approval without the DIA at the construction drawing stage. Flood studies are only applicable for the construction drawing stage. And so we would not need a flood study at the preliminary submittal point.
Okay, we don't have any other questions in the chat. Of course, lots of requests for this PowerPoint to be shared. And so I've shared with everybody that when this meeting ends, we will send it out to everyone who had registered for this meeting. If you don't get it, please email Barney. His email is on the screen. We'll also be sharing a link to the video if it helps to have his, narration and explanation along with the PowerPoint. So I think you got a hot ticket, lots of requests for your PowerPoint with all those links included. There is another question. Landon followed up, still interested in which stormwater rules to follow, not just for the DIA. If a submittal were made next week, meaning before the new rules are in effect.
Okay, Landon, yeah, good question. So typically if a submittal, take a subdivision, a Wake County subdivision submittal has been, it's in progress, which means it, in my mind, a preliminary TRC submittal has officially been made. If it's made before our new stormwater rule implementation date of the UDO, then it would follow the current stormwater regulations. And so, that's sort of your target to submit preliminarily before the adoption of the new rules. And so we're anticipating November, December of this year of having the new Neuse River stormwater rules adopted in our Article 9. And so I would say there's a chance you may be under the current regulations if you submit your preliminary subdivision, by November, 1st of December. But after that, it's a there's a chance you may be obligated to the new stormwater rules if the UDO has been adopted, the Article 9 update's been adopted. Say December 15th is the effective date of our Article 9 update. Any preliminary submittals that would come through the planning department for our TRC review, after December 15th, as an example of this year, would be subject to the new stormwater regulations. So yeah, I would say if you're going to submit in January next year, most likely you're going to be subject to the new Neuse River stormwater regulations.
And you got a thanks for that from Landon, Barney. So
okay.
Good job and good questions. I don't see any other questions. Barney, is there anything else you or your staff want to share?
No, I think I covered everything. Try to get you all out of here in an hour and respect your time. Like I say, that survey is going to come out, and we welcome your feedback and input on any of these workshops you all want to see in the future. It may not be me, maybe one of our field staff or management staff that may provide the next one. We probably will do a Neuse River stormwater rule update workshop at some point, just to give you all a chance to ask questions and hear the more specific information about the Article 9 updates. And so Landon, that will hopefully we'll have that available before our implementation effective date of Article 9 there. So, but we welcome your feedback. We'd like to start doing more of these workshops this year and in the future.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Barney, for talking for an hour straight with only a few sips of water, but lots of good info. And again, as soon as this ends, we're going to work to get everyone's email who attended today and registered and get out this PowerPoint and that link to the quick survey that would really help us. And if we can, possibly even share the video link quickly. So thanks, everybody. Again, reach out to us anytime, and we appreciate everyone joining us.
Thanks, everyone.